Hello, welcome to Real Film Snobs. I'm Angela Yeager.
And I'm Brian Michael. That clip you saw at the top of the show is for Kingsman, The Golden Circle. What happens when Hollywood goes, hey, the first one was a big success. Here's a ton of money. Make a second one before you have any ideas on knowing what you want to do. And they just kind of go, okay, sure. This movie is a big, bloated disappointment and a bit of a mess. It does have the continued adventures of the Kingsmen and returning people from the first one who were supposed to be dead, not giving anything away, Colin Firth returns. And of course, they're attacked. The whole Kingsman is all taken under. They have to go to the Statesmen, who are the undercover secret agency of the Americans, and try to stop a plot by, I'm bored going right through this. They have to try to stop a villain played by Julianne Moore, who's actually kind of a bit of a Bond villain, and then plays it with quite, a lot of glee, but is not in the movie enough to kind of hold things up. She's trying to, she's tainted the world's drugs and then holds the world hostage until they legalize drugs. It's a dumb plot, which is fine. That doesn't bother me so much because the first one, the action was so much fun. It was pretty inventive, and I had a really good time. And it was Colin Firth, playing, kicking butt. I enjoyed it. It had a great centerpiece in the church. For those who had seen the movie, you remember the church scene. This movie has several different ones where there's a lot of action, and it just turns the volume up. Literally just turns the volume up. There was several times in this movie I actually wanted to plug my ears because it got
really
so incredibly loud because there was nothing on the screen. Normally you'd be able to tell who's who and what's kind of going on, and this one it was just like, oh, the slow motion, here we go.
Oh yeah.
It could have been Wonder Woman, it could have been Spider-Man, it could have been anybody, I'm just
it could have been
you
doing some moves with enough CGI.
Well, I should say Spider-Man, but the Wonder Woman, those Zack Snyder films do a lot of that slow motion. It's really gotten played out, but if there's no stakes, we don't really care about these characters, even though we had the past film. It was just like, oh no, this is where the movie's going. Nowhere. Colin Firth comes back. He's supposed to have some sort of PTSD with butterflies, and it was like, why are you here? And I love, movies should be better with him in it, but it was like,
cheesy. Yeah.
There's no reason for him to be in this movie at all. Channing Tatum's in it for 2 minutes?
Yeah, it's about the same as Jeff Bridges.
Jeff Bridges in it for 1, and it's just like,
talk about a waste.
Boy.
Yeah, so
Oof.
those of you who follow Real Film Snobs on Twitter or Facebook have already seen my rants about the politics of the movie, which I will leave to social media, so you can follow us on Facebook or like us on, or I'm getting that all mixed up, like us on Facebook or follow us on Twitter to see my rants since I saw this movie. I've been on a lot of them. So about my views on some of the misogyny and some of the politics in the movie. We'll sweep that aside and get into the filmmaking.
I really want to talk about the misogyny because they had a female villain.
Yeah, big deal. Julianne Moore and Halle Berry are given nothing to do in this movie.
Oh, yeah. Oh, no, that's right. Halle Berry was in it for 5 minutes.
Yeah, Julianne Moore is so good usually, but she looks like she's going, I don't actually agree with you that she's doing with Glee. I think she looks a little bit like she doesn't know what she's supposed to be doing in the movie. It's bad when she's upstaged by Elton John. I mean, the whole cast really is.
Oh, no, don't bring it back. I was trying to forget about Elton John.
But it's bad. It's bad. And this, so I won't get into the misogyny, the whole thing of how they're supposed to plant this woman with a device, which is, a sexual,
that's just
and they just sort
stupid.
of assume that, of course, she's going to go with either one of them, apparently, to do this thing.
Awful.
It was gross. It was just nasty. It's very insulting to
women. And that's a weird use of special effects, by the way.
And it's not like the first film was so progressive towards women or anything. Don't get me wrong. It's not like I expect that in a movie. But if it was well made or well acted or well edited or interesting in any way or entertaining, perhaps, but it was 2.5 hours of a really overblown music video, and it wasn't even as good as a lot of music videos. As you mentioned, you have Jeff Bridges, Halle Berry, Julianne Moore, Julianne Moore, Channing Tatum doing nothing, and they almost came on like the director Matthew Vaughn wanted to introduce them almost like it was an episode of Love Boat. Like Jeff Bridges comes in and he swings around and the camera pans to him, and we're all like, Jeff Bridges, and then he does nothing.
And then the boat.
Yeah.
And then you go back on.
Well, no,
Captain
it's literally
Stewie.
like each person gets an introduction. Like
Yeah.
Channing Tatum walks in and it's like a big entrance, and then nothing. He sits in ice for literally the rest of the movie. Nothing is happening in this movie, and it's trying to get people pumped up. People in our audience, when we saw it, some people were clapping and cheering. It's
They
sort
were
of
drunk.
like it's sort of like the equivalent though of like you go to a rock concert and a band like just turns the volume up and gets the smoke machines going, and they start jumping up and down, and everyone else starts jumping up and down, and it's not till like 5 minutes later you realize this song really sucks actually.
Yeah.
But people get hyped up because there's a few good songs in the movie. The Elton John song during one of the big action sequences.
Well, that's a great song, but
it's a great song. But if you realize what's happening during the scene, there is nothing happening.
Just
and people are like,
awful.
it's a someone I got into it on Facebook was like, well, it's not supposed to be serious. It's like, no, it's not. But
But it wasn't
the
any
movie
fun
has
either.
to still progress a storyline of something or do something with the characters.
Well, even there was, we see the very time we first see Julianne Moore, she has this guy come in and he brings in this other recruit, and she's like, okay, your job is to kill this guy because he's been taking money.
We've never
so
seen
he
this
does.
before.
In this guy, so now this guy's the new recruit, and then later on she's like, oh no, you've been doing it now. We got to kill you. And I'm like, what's the point? Why are we doing this? What do we really care? Now they did have a really cool moment where it was called the Golden Circle.
it's just to
where
see
they-
people die.
Where they filed the
That's no
teeth
other
down,
reason.
took off fingerprints, and then gave them the golden circle, which that was actually kind of cool. That was totally a Bond thing that they should be stealing from, or should still be stolen from. But
we don't feel invested at all. We don't care that
no,
anybody's dying. There's
none of them.
people dying left
Nope.
and right. We have is dehuman.
I felt
it's
bad.
Just a no care.
I felt bad for the robot dogs.
Dogs. Oh, they had more personality than a lot of the actors in this movie, and that's why I said, when Elton John and the robot dogs are stealing your movie, you've got a problem.
And I feel really
Not
bad
that Elton John
I'm a
isn't
big,
great, but he's not an actor.
I'm a big Matthew Vaughn fan. I really like his stuff. He finally gets to make a sequel to one of his movies, and
yeah, it should not have been
swing and a
made.
miss.
Yeah, it's really bad.
Ouch.
I'm giving it 1 star.
Yeah, that's about right.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, so let's totally flip the script here, and a small movie called Patty Cakes has been making some noise here and there, and you finally got to see it. And unfortunately, this is a movie I wish that was the beginning of the summer, because this is one of those really cool little summer hits. And I'm using Hustle and Flow as an example, not by coincidence. That it tells a story of a young girl, Killa P, who wants to be a rap artist, and I'm like, oh no, an actor, rapper, what's the situation here? And they're gonna rap. This is gonna be awful. And they're gonna make some music. And I was very surprised how much I really enjoyed the music, because if the music did not work, if she could not rap, if it did not work, this was gonna fall flat. As
Right, it was
charming
gonna
as
be
everything
bad.
else
Yeah,
is,
no,
this
it
was
would have been
not
bad.
gonna work.
No, but it actually works.
The music is solid. So she's got her mother, who was an artist, played by Bridget Everett, a very funny comedian, and her grandmother, played by Kathleen Moriarty, who we haven't seen for quite some time.
Oh,
is
so good.
absolutely
Practically steals the movie.
delightful.
So
she steals
good.
every scene she's in.
Yes,
she's
every
absolutely
scene she's
fantastic.
in.
And so
Kathleen
her and her
Moriarty,
friends
yeah.
are trying to break into the industry and get. She meets one of her idols. It's a bit of a disappointment. She's just trying to get a record deal, and it's a mix of Purple Rain and Hustle and Flow in a great way. It's a very energetic film. You can't help if you don't like rap music, it may not necessarily be your cup of tea, but even if you can tolerate it, and if you don't mind some of the bad language, it's just such a fun movie and such an energetic film.
Yeah.
It's you don't get to she has accomplishments, she has some failures in it, she has some setbacks, and she pushes forward. People push her forward, she gives up, and I absolutely love that. And everyone around her, are full characters, and you really root for everybody. And at the end scene, I didn't cry during the end scene, but boy, it was real close.
It's sort of like your typical rags to sort of almost riches story. It's not quite rags to riches, but it's that type of story. And I do like the fact that all the supporting characters around her are also very charming.
Oh, yes.
Her best friend, who is this really positive, upbeat guy who works as a pharmacist or in the pharmacy department during the day, but he also wants to be in the rap game. And then her sort of love interest, who goes by the name of the Antichrist or something. And even though that might sound offensive, it's actually played very sweetly, and I don't know how to explain it, but it is very sweet. And then her grandmother, her relationship, her mother and her have a very tension-filled relationship.
A great relationship.
Yes,
though. I mean, for film.
For film, yes. But her grandmother is the one she's really close to spiritually, and Kathy Moriarty, who I think several people didn't. You and Murray, I don't think, recognized her at first. You know, she's of course this great actress who, you know, Oscar nominee, Raging Bull. You know, all these movies. Haven't seen her forever, but as soon as I heard her voice, that raspy kind of like smoker voice, her dark, you know, deep voice, I thought, oh, that's Kathy Moriarty. Wow, and she's great in every scene she's in, and she really encourages her granddaughter and gets into the rap thing. There's some great sequences with them making music together in the shed. And, you know, some of it's, of course, very unrealistic in the way, you know, MC Light's character comes in and, you know, kind of helps her out and everything.
Well, that I didn't find too much. It's just how quickly some of the music falls together. But that's fine. That's
always
fine. There was no
happens
montage that I
you
put
know,
in
the
there
song
or
they
nothing like
do
that.
doesn't sound so
It's so
overproduced.
good.
You know, one of the
Yeah.
issues I had with,
it's
like,
so
for instance, the movie
good.
Sing Street, which is another one I think, if you liked Sing Street and you can handle rap music, you know, one of the issues I had, though, is every song came out like it had been made by, you know, Warner Brothers Music, or, you know, it sounded very produced, like something a local band couldn't do. These songs actually sound with, you know, like your Pro Tools and stuff, like stuff they could have done on their own, which I like.
But, you know, I want to point that, you know, her relationship with her mother, because her mother, you know, had a burgeoning music career that was taken from her, so to speak, when she became pregnant. And so she's still very bitter about that and still kind of, you know, treats her as an anchor, but now as anchoring her. And I love that aspect of it. And she, you know, when she says, oh, I want to be a rapper, and she's like, you know, never gonna make it, and she's holding her back. Then she goes to the bar. She drinks too much because, you know, Killer P is a bartender there. I mean, there's just so many great dynamics. Gosh, how long is the movie? Was that movie even very long?
It was only like an hour and a half.
But it felt like it felt like a full, complete movie. It had its own complete universe. It built its entire world, and I really enjoyed it.
Well, it's set in like a working class. It's in Newark, I believe, New Jersey, and you know, I liked that it was very diverse, and it wasn't, you know,
it's
she's
such
sort
a
of
find.
dealing with her economic realities. Yeah, I'm really disappointed because it did show here in Salem, and it was here for only a week, and it didn't do super well, and it just made me sad because, and that's actually probably one of the reasons I was as angry as I was after I saw the Kingsman and got on Twitter and started ranting because, you know, I don't expect movies like Patty Cakes to do as well as the Kingsman, but even if like 10%, 5%, 1% of the people who had spent that money on the Kingsman would spend their money on a movie like this, which deserves it so much more. It's just,
and
it's got so much more heart and soul
and
imagination. It's got as much in one pinky as that movie had in 2.5 hours. So gosh, it's like Lawrence of Arabia. No, I'm not saying Lawrence of Arabia is a better movie, don't get me wrong, but I'm saying the length of it, you would expect something to happen.
Something epic.
Yeah, anything to happen. Okay, so we'll move on to our next movie, and we have a clip for this one, and this one is Mother. Okay, our next film is Mother, and Javier Bardem and Jennifer Lawrence play a newlywed couple who moved into a gorgeous Victorian house that she's remodeling, and suddenly besieged by, well, sort of unwelcome guests, unwelcome to her, who are also fans of Bardem's character, who is a famous poet. That's the plot, at least, such as it is. But this is the newest film by Darren Aronofsky, and he is the auteur of The Black Swan and Wrestler and Requiem for a Dream and Pi. And if you haven't seen any of those movies, don't start with this one. Go back. Go back.
Watch them in order, actually. That's the best way to see his work.
Fountain. I mean, I could, you know, many. Don't start with Noah, because that won't set you up for this one. Start with any of those other ones I mentioned, and then watch this one. Because I think one of the things, you know, there's been a huge divide with this movie. This is one of those movies that people say, why do critics like it? And regular people don't like it overall. I mean, there's some critics who haven't liked it, but it's a big divide. Sort of like the opposite of the Kingsman. Why do the critics hate it and the people love it? I can't answer that one. But, you know, there's a reason. This is a filmmaker who's built up a reputation for doing certain types of movies that challenge us. This is to me is a 3.5-star movie. I really liked aspects of it. It's not a perfect movie, but it is a very interesting movie. And there are some shots in this movie that I thought were fantastic. There's the scene at the party where it just is like continually moving, which I just thought was amazing. So I'm curious to see what you think. I'm really like, are you going to be on the?
No, you know, I enjoyed the first half of this film, and then once you know, I get the allegory. I knew what it was ahead of time. I'm good, and then it just kind of hits you over the head with a sock full of quarters.
Well, I don't know if it hit everyone over the head, Brian, because a lot of people, one of the complaints is people didn't know what the movie was about. But you got it.
It got it. And you know, the interesting thing, you know, the close-ups on her, we didn't leave her face which is never a complaint with Jennifer Lawrence. She's a very beautiful young woman. But it just felt like, okay, so we got there. What's, you know, where I know where it's going. I can see the ending. I already kind of predicted what's going on. Where are we going from there?
Did you see it going with the birth?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And as soon as that was going to happen, I was like, oh, yeah, as soon as that's going to happen, I know exactly what's going to happen to the kid because I know what happens to his son. So and it went on just a little too long, and it just got this really could have, and I've never said this, this could have been a short film. This really could have been.
It's about 2 hours.
A 20-minute movie.
20
and
minutes.
hit it and hit the target. Would have cost a lot less. And wouldn't have hurt their careers. But this really could have been a much shorter, smaller. It's an easy, short subject film. This has been a great short film. It would have won an Academy Award. But no.
I could see being a little shorter. I mean, I could see an hour, even to an hour and a half. I don't know if I agree with you about 20 minutes. Because
it's pretty quick and easy.
Well, part of it is kind of that development, though, of things sort of just slowly starting to get weird. You know, you have the Ed Harris and Michelle Pfeiffer character. When they first come in, it's just
and
like...
who are Ed Harris and Michelle Pfeiffer in the aspect of the allegory? That's the other thing.
Well, we don't know exactly, but they're the first ones to enter and kind of make things weird. Well, I think...
It's great seeing Michelle Pfeiffer.
Daniel had a theory about Michelle Pfeiffer that she was supposed to be this something of Babylon or biblically.
Yeah, but I don't think that's right. I think it's more of an A&E. So.
Oh, okay.
But no, I can't recommend it. I certainly would not want to recommend it to people out there. If I did, it'd be like cautiously go out there. You know, if you like
I'm
Noah.
surprised. So you're only giving like
2 stars.
2 stars.
Yeah,
oh, wow.
Yeah.
Oh,
just
come on! You're saying this is only 1 star
it,
better than the Kingsman? Come on.
But it's a different scale. This was an art house film that was.
So you're judging Aronofsky on a harder, more difficult scale.
Yeah, because I had higher expectations for him of the films that he's done. I mean, look at the Black Swan, The Wrestler, Pi, Requiem for a Dream. These are fantastic accomplishments. Now listen, when he made the Fountain, you know what? I didn't like The Fountain. I couldn't recommend The Fountain, but I do respect him for what he did as an artist for doing that. But I would be, I just would not want to sit through it. Though I think a part of me is still sitting through it. Well, here's the tree. Oh, God.
Yeah, that movie was a little tedious. I will give you that. I enjoyed this one more than The Fountain, partially because I understood it a little bit better. The Fountain, a lot of times I kind of found myself drifting off and going, and then coming back and going, oh, where are we? This one I was able to stay with it. The creationism / environmental message of this, was very interesting to me. I thought the performances were effective. I thought Javier Bardem was actually a great choice.
How is it $50 million? That's what I want to know.
I thought it was 40,
really?
But anyway.
How is it that much? How?
Salaries?
What?
I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah, and unfortunately, and
Cameo by
studios
Kristen
do this.
Wiig cost
Studios want to, Kristen Wiig, and studios really want to have the first weekend be a big, so they've got to get everyone in there the first weekend. So they pushed it as a horror film.
It's not a horror film.
That is not a horror film. It's not. Unless you really don't like it, then it's a different kind of horror film. But it is, in a way, kind of a
homeowner's horror film. There was a few scenes where you were horrified, but if you're a homeowner, there's some scenes that are
I wanted to scream.
Where she keeps asking them, that is not supported. Get off the sink. Stop. Those scenes are, horrific.
I did enjoy
in a
that, but
different
even
way.
after a while, it was kind of grating, and I just didn't feel good afterwards and during, and it was like, oh my God, this poor woman. I understand what's going on,
Yeah, it was
but I
very
don't want to see
tension-filled.
her punched and kicked in the face.
I thought it was very effective. It really, to me, drove home the point.
A couple times have been good enough.
And to me, it was very effective filmmaking and gorgeous filmmaking. I just thought the film looked fantastic.
There's a woman being abused in a film. You have no problem with that part.
Well, there was a point to it, though. I mean, if you go off the allegory of what's going on, if you saw a movie about a domestic violence, person, you would have to see some of the abuse. This is a case of if she is the mother of creation, yes, I think we could make an argument that we're abusing her pretty well and kicking her while she's down. So to me, the allegory worked, as disturbing and horrible as it is to watch.
It was tough to stomach.
Okay, so we'll move on to our next movie, and that is her Fresh Picks. That's where I'm putting together a list of movies that came out this year or critically acclaimed that Brian and I missed in the theater, and there's always a ton of them to choose from. And then there's always a lot of great movies that only get to show in like a couple cities, or maybe they come here and we miss them. So our next one is by a filmmaker both Brian and I have been following for quite a few years, and one of our really great modern filmmaker, Koreeda, and his movie is After the Storm. And this one is about a man who's kind of been down on his luck. He's got an issue with gambling, and actually during a storm, he ends up reuniting in a way, or getting kind of stuck at the apartment of his mother with his ex-wife and his child, who he's been a bit estranged from, and he starts to kind of reevaluate, his life and his choices. And very similar to a lot of other Koreeda's films, are very focused on family. He did a film last year called Our Little Sister, which is just one of my favorite films of the year. Just loved that film. And he's done a whole series of movies. Nobody Knows, which was also about family in a different way, about a mother who's abandoned her children and the kids band together. And his first film that I think was one that we kind of put him on the map for us, which was the Afterlife. And
Amazing
just
film.
phenomenal movie. So this is just
Beautiful.
a lot of people have called Koreeda sort of the modern heir to the films of Ozu in a way, and I could see that in that he's very interested in domestic affairs, very interested in family and modern life. His films are a little less. Samey is not the word I want to go for, but they're not as consistent as Ozu, and I don't think that's a bad thing. They're not always, Ozu is almost like you could interchange his films one for another. I really enjoyed this movie. It is very hard to watch at times, I think, as you noted, because of the gambling addiction.
Oh, yeah.
If you're
Yeah,
someone
no,
that just
that's
has a
always
hard time
tough.
watching a character who's kind of,
self-destructive.
it's kind of circling the drain, that can be very difficult to watch. Reminds me, not too long ago in a group of friends, we were watching Mississippi Grind, and several people were just having a hard time watching that because of the character continually to make bad choices over and over. And this character has some similarities to that in that he's not doing the best thing for his kid.
It's interesting. You compare him to Ozu, and people would say, nothing ever happens in those movies. And you watch Tokyo Story, like he found out his father wasn't his father, and it was the guy in the circus. That's a big deal. They didn't, he didn't scream and yell and freak out about it. He just heard about it and crumbled inside. This movie, you can literally say nothing happens because maybe nothing has happened from maybe the characters haven't necessarily changed from the beginning to the end. Really, in many ways, they haven't. And this is just one of those little slice of life movies where you just kind of come into someone's life and then you kind of go out. And it is such a small, quaint little movie of just little tiny moments of beauty, and that just captures little tiny moments, of his mother being so happy that his ex-wife is there with her grandson, and she gets to spend time with him. And then her other daughter comes in, and she's kind of competitive with her brother. And you do get to see him where he's trying to get some money because he's trying to pay off some debts, and he's actually got a job where he's doing pretty darn good at it. And then he does some of the things, but and then the storm in the end is really sweet and endearing, and the way it ends, and she gives him a look. Nothing has changed. If it was a remake, this is a Hollywood picture.
Oh, they probably
would have changed. Things would have been.
Oh yeah, there'd been a
big arc and something and
cute love ending. Yeah,
but there wasn't, and I know you just you think about it now, and it's continuing on. It's probably another month has passed. He probably hasn't paid, and she's probably forgiving him and letting him spend some time with her son, and he's scrounging some money to get
they're
together.
still making some delicious looking food in the kitchen.
And
something I love about Japanese movies, they're always making these delicious looking meals. They always show people making food and preparing food as part of family life. In his movies in particular, but a lot of Japanese movies, it's a very essential part of the films a lot of times, and I love that. But I love how they just have that happening while people are interacting and
this
talking.
film isn't like escapism, and a lot of times people want to see movies to escape, and this is just something you're going to see regular people doing regular things, and it's refreshing, and it's really nice to see that.
Oh man, nice such a palate cleanser with the Kingsman, I'll tell you that.
Yeah, but we get to see all of these different people in this world that exists. So it feels like it just feels really fresh. It's a 4-star film. It's
great.
Easy to give 4 stars to this movie.
Just like Our Little Sister, it was just like, which I think I liked Our Little Sister a little bit better, but I really liked this one as well.
A retrospective on him would be a lot of fun.
Oh,
okay, so we're going to move on to our viewers pick. That's where viewers like you at home write to us and tell us, hey, review this movie. We have Jason Aguayo. Oh, it's Jason. That's our director, Jason Aguayo. He actually recommended this movie a little bit of time ago.
Just a tiny bit.
Just a few years, just a little bit of time ago. And it took us a while to get to this. So he recommended When We Were Kings from 1996. He says, with the passing of Muhammad Ali last week, it's been a while, I had to revisit this great documentary. The film captured Ali and champion George Foreman as they traveled to Zaire for the epic Rumble in the Jungle. It took more than 20 years to complete, and it did win the Academy Award. The film is so much more than just a sport. It's a ton of great music from all of the people who were there playing at the fight, such as James Brown and B.B. King. There are great interviews with Norman Mailer and George Plimpton, and an amazing path of redemption for a man who gave up everything to make a stand for his beliefs. In terms of Ali, this is the Rumble in the Jungle, and this is, of course, is famous for the rope-a-dope. If you don't know what the rope-a-dope is, you gotta watch the movie, because I don't watch boxing, but I love watching boxing after the fact. When someone has broken it down and said, this is what they've done. There's been several fights where they're like, well, this person automatically, got the advantage because of the size of the ring, because of the weight of the gloves. I always find what they did before and afterwards, I always think interesting. And so many times the decisions can be, it's already decided before they've even gotten into the ring because of things that have happened. And of course, Ali is in full-blown character here. And poor George Foreman. God, George Foreman's a sweet, sweet, sweet man. And here he's painted as a villain because Ali just turns the people on him. He knows how to make someone look villainous. He did a worse job on Frasier. He was terrible to Frasier in one of the documentaries. I've seen that. But we do get to see the strategy and strategy that he used, as well as Norman Mailer and George Plimpton giving some great commentary on what happened.
Yeah, and as someone, again, who's not a boxing fan and not super, well, I'm familiar with this fight, and I have actually already seen there's actually a really good concert documentary that's just about the concert itself that has extended performances of it, and it's really great. It has quite a bit of extended sequences of James Brown and the other performers, and it's really good. But this is more, of course, it has a little bit of that intertwined, but it's really more focused, of course, on Ali and Foreman, and particularly on Ali, though. You know, we forget. Well, we don't forget, but we shouldn't forget that he's more relevant now than ever with everything going on in the country with Black Lives Matters and, you know, a lot of the racial justice issues. Ali, you know, was speaking out about this. I mean, it was weird how prescient it was, some of the things that he talks about in this movie. And, you know, he was a real figurehead and he was very political. And that was not common, you know, always for athletes, particularly for boxers. And so now we see it more, but, you know, that wasn't common. And, you know, he was one of these people that came out and really took a stand on some issues, and sometimes always not for the better for his career, you know, quite honestly, because people wanted him to just box sometimes. So, and he used his fame as an athlete to get the message out that he wanted to. And he is such a charismatic, you know, good-looking man. So when he really holds the screen in this movie, you just can't take your eyes off of him. And it gets into the strategy of how he decides to defeat Foreman, which I just thought was amazing. So.
All right, so let's see. We both pass on Kingsman. Oof. We both highly recommend Patty Cake. We split on Mother. We both highly recommend After the Storm, and we both recommend When We Were Kings.
Thank you, Jason, for recommending more viewers picks.
Yes. And so you can like us on Facebook. You can follow us on Twitter. You can subscribe to us on YouTube. You can listen to us on KMUZ. You can watch us on Corvallis and Silverton now, as well as Salem. We want to thank our wonderful sponsors, our fantastic volunteers, my wonderful co-host, and thank you for watching. Have a great day and great movies.